Welcome to HailChatter. Today we are talking about why Dallas gets so many storms. Okay, Dallas is the hailstorm capital of the world. We say that quite often here at Hail Trace. But why does it get so many storms? It has to do with the concrete jungle that Dallas exists in. So here with us today is Collin Hunt on the marketing team and our CEO Derik Kline. Derik has prepared for us an expert analysis of why Dallas gets so many storms. Derik, tell us, why is DFW the hail capital of the world?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why Dallas gets so much hail. So you can't just have concrete, right? Like it's not only concrete that makes them have, because otherwise we'd have Chicago would have lots of hail, right? Houston would have lots of hail. Miami would have lots of hail. LA would have lots of hail.
New York City?
Oh yeah, they would. I mean, could you imagine the hailstorms in New York City? I mean,
no, it's probably a good thing that they don't get hail.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so. But it's a combination of the amount of concrete that Dallas has and then their location in the United States, and specifically where they are from the mountains to the plains in Canada, the Gulf of Mexico. All of those ingredients come together, and the urban heat island adds an extra level of instability and heat for these thunderstorms that doesn't exist anywhere else.
And I know a lot of people already know what urban heat island is. Mm-hmm. We know it gets hotter where there's concrete and less grass and less trees. But again, that fuels storms.
It absolutely does, right? So, and specifically when storms develop is when typically our thunderstorms develop late afternoon, early evening, and sometimes overnight hours. And a lot of times that's when the urban heat island is most effective. So, sometimes during the daylight, peak heating, right, Dallas, Texas is similar in temperature to the surrounding areas, so maybe within a degree or two. But as the sun sets, that concrete doesn't just cool off like the ground. And so the heat doesn't radiate out as fast as it would in other areas. And so now all of a sudden you start to see this 10-degree temperature difference, right? So it might be 87 in Dallas and it might be 77 in Valley View, Texas, 2 hours north of Dallas.
I want people, if you watch this during the summertime or during a hot day that it's been really sunny outside, right around sunset or maybe an hour or two afterwards, walk by a concrete building. You'll be able to feel the heat radiating off of that building. That is the urban heat island effect that we're talking about here, where that concrete holds on to those hot temperatures, even into the late night hours.
Yep, and it just has to be a big enough area to impact the weather, right? So Oklahoma City, probably in a better position for severe weather as far as the dry line, the mountains, the cold air from the north, the Gulf of Mexico. We actually get worse severe weather around Oklahoma City than Dallas does, because we're in a more conditioned spot for those things to happen. But what Dallas does different is their heat island is so large. So the air, it takes us 30 minutes to drive across Oklahoma City. Kansas City is going to be similar, right? Wichita is probably 20 minutes. And I'm not talking about during rush hour, but Dallas it's a 2-hour drive to cross the city. That is a massive landmass that is just all concrete. And so when you think about, how much heat comes off of a building and you multiply it by that aerial coverage, it's a huge area that's being impacted by that heat.
Absolutely. It's a massive area, and it's set up very similar to Oklahoma City to be primed for storms anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious on this, Derik, because so what you're saying is Dallas is both in the right location to be able to create storms and the urban heat island that it has, and that kind of makes it unique in creating storms. And kind of what's the difference between that, like compared to like Chicago, where does have a unique urban heat island where it does have enough concrete there to create some storms, but Like, we don't see as many storms there in Chicago compared to Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are several pieces that go into that. And we're going to get into here in a minute what the cap is, because the cap is what fuels all this. This is why all this happens. But Chicago, what's different about Chicago is there's a massive cold water body, Lake Michigan, that is right next to it. That changes the weather drastically on whether we have cold outflow boundaries that come in. And sometimes I've even seen Lake Michigan create hell itself. So you'll see these outflow boundaries come off the lake, and they'll trigger thunderstorms on the warm side of the boundary that will create some hail. So everybody's got their own little microclimates that do different things. But the big thing with Chicago is Lake Michigan, how far it is from the Gulf of Mexico, also how close it is to the cold air in Canada, and also how far away it is from the mountains. So that dry air plays a big role in hail production. So we need that dry air, especially aloft, to create cold conditions up in our mid-levels of our atmosphere. We call that a mixing layer, or lapse rates is another way that we look at that. Those lapse rates aren't as strong in Chicago as they would be in like Dallas or Oklahoma City or even Denver or Kansas City, Omaha, right? The further east you get, the worse the lapse rates get for hail production.
And lapse rates, that is pivotal. Higher lapse rates is pivotal for creating large hail. That's something that we look at almost every day whenever we forecast hail. But let's get into it. Let's get into this presentation that you have here. So we'll start off with how the cap works.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, we're going to really work to explain how the cap works. So this brown air, so think about, so there are two pieces to a cap that are important to understand. One is that warm air rises, right? So think about your house. You have, if it's warm downstairs, the warm air is going to rise upstairs. The upstairs is going to be warmer than the downstairs part of your house, correct? First concept of a cap. Second part is dry air and wet air. Okay, so what we want to understand is that, think about water, right? So think about the lake or the pond. The first spring day where you live, it's 85 degrees, it's super warm, and you don't go jump in the pond or the swimming pool because it's still 50 degrees from the cold.
Yes.
It takes a long time for water to heat up and cool down. But dryness, the air warms up and heats up really fast. So in our air mass, when we have this dry layer, it also heats up and cools off very fast. Okay, so we've got this layer of dry air in the middle levels of the atmosphere, and the sun's out, and it warms it up really quick. And it warms up warmer than the air at the ground. Okay, so now all of a sudden, the temperature, we're going to give specific numbers to help people understand this. In our brown layer, we're at 90 degrees. Okay, and so in order for us to get lift or warm air to create a thunderstorm, the temperature at the ground has to be higher than 90 degrees, or else it cannot lift up through that warm, dry layer. Okay,
and that's what we call the cap.
The cap, exactly. So in most places, there's a lot of times we break the cap, but sometimes we don't. What sets Dallas apart is that urban heat island. And you're probably like, okay, I'm starting to put these pieces together. It's hotter in Dallas, especially in the evening when thunderstorms like to develop. And so what that does is it helps the thunderstorms overcome that. So all of a sudden, the surface warms up so much that it overcomes this hot, dry layer in the middle. And as soon as that cap is eroded, boom, we get a thunderstorm. Okay, so that's exactly how this happens, right? So it's that 10-degree difference in that temperature. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to show a specific example of a $1 billion hailstorm that would not have happened in any other city, in my opinion, in the world. Okay, so $1 billion in damage. This is not good. I apologize to all the policyholders in Dallas, because this cannot be good for their insurance rates.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna lie, but $1 billion hailstorm that would not have happened anywhere, and the urban heat island is to blame for this hailstorm.
If we didn't have all of that concrete, all of that heating throughout the day, diurnal heating is what we call whenever we have a lot of sunshine out there that beams down on the earth and heats up that surface. Of course, holding that heat in with all the concrete through the late night hours, and here we go. These storms come through and they just explode because they can feed off of that heat at the surface.
Exactly. Now, Collin, while we get this next slide loaded up here, like, where's your brain going with this? So as a non-meteorologist, right, like, mind blown yet?
Yeah, I mean, so I am curious on this cap on are the storms more severe if the cap is like stronger, or like it, what creates a stronger cap and then finally it explodes into a really big storm, or like what kind of influences a weaker cap or a stronger cap?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the warmer the air aloft, the stronger the cap. There have definitely been, like, I've seen days where 100 degrees is what it's going to take, and the high is going to be 85. It's not happening.
Yeah.
You know, we call that like a loaded gun barrel, essentially. Like the atmosphere is super unstable; it's ready to pop, but there is no trigger, right? So the trigger is not there, and so that's very common to see. But a strong cap is important to strong severe weather as well, because if we don't get a really strong cap, we can get rain all day long, in which we don't get the heat that we need to create the instability to create hail. So if the cap isn't strong, the lift also is not very strong, right? So think about it this way. In order to get a cap to break, the lift has to be very strong, right? I mean, it's our employee of the year, right? That's what we call them, the cap breaker, because only the strongest can win, right? And so the lift has to be super strong to break through that cap. But if the cap isn't there, the lift, it doesn't take very much lift, so you just get some rain.
Collin, a way that I like to describe the cap is, think about like a pop bottle. You can take Dr. Pepper, you've got root beer, whatever your favorite pop is. Whenever you shake it up, what happens whenever you undo the cap?
Yeah, it's going everywhere and
it explodes
on yourself.
Now, if that cap stays on, then slowly that pop is going to relax and fizzle out. And then an hour or two later, you can take off the top and enjoy your favorite beverage. But if the cap comes off just at the right time, then you get, boom, thunderstorms.
With Mentos.
With Mentos. Yeah, so that was a great question. So here's your DFW.
So this is generally, right, this is kind of the area that you would see the urban heat island take effect, right? So you've got, you know, if you're familiar with Dallas, this is kind of where this whole area is pretty much filled in with concrete. So it's a fairly large, you can see it's like 4 counties. And what's interesting is 5 counties, I guess. What's interesting though is this area is growing. So it's only getting worse. I mean, what it was 5 years ago is completely different than what it is today. Like, there are areas that are now concrete that are even further out. So
I am curious, Derik, was there a point that the urban heat island didn't really exist with Dallas? Or like, at what point did you start noticing these type of storms showing up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure 30 years ago, it probably wasn't. Now, Dallas is probably in the last 20 years has turned into, you know, where it affects the weather. So it's kind of a microclimate is what you would call it. Anyway, so as we kind of go through, you can see we've got like some slides on here, but it's just a huge metro area. So now we're going to jump into where we talk about what it is so we're going to give you a specific weather example, okay? So this is, I want to say it's June 6th. And what happened is we had this outflow boundary. So some thunderstorms had formed, and so it's 86 degrees in Dallas. And picture it, so 86, 78 to the north. So there's your urban heat island, right? So these are actual temperatures, okay? Now we had this outflow boundary that comes down out of Oklahoma. So there was some showers and storms that had kind of weakened, and they pushed out like almost like a mini cold front. And it traversed all of Oklahoma, all the way across the Red River. We had no severe weather, no thunderstorm activity. You can see there's the storms way out to the west, but we had this outflow boundary. And so whenever you click here, right, you're going to see this outflow boundary. Watch it just pop up right there. So this is the outflow boundary. It's almost like a mini cold front. And it did nothing as it went all the way across Oklahoma into Texas. But as soon as it made it to the urban heat island, we've got our first attempt to break the cap. Right, so it's now made it to that 86 degree air. So at 78, it wasn't warm enough to break the cap, but 86 was. And so all of a sudden, we've got the first radar echoes that go up. And so as you go forward, it doesn't take very long. We now get our first hail marker on the storm. So now the lift is strong enough that we're actually creating hail. It may not be falling to the ground, but we are starting to create some hail in this storm. And then what's going to happen is it's going to actually split. So it's a very common trait for urban heat island storms is that they will split, and the right mover, the one that pulls off on the right, will produce the largest hail. And we saw it right away. As soon as it split, the blue is actually a very large hail marker, and the red is more of your ping pong ball size hail marker. So both storms produced hail, but as this storm moved directly into the urban heat island, it dropped 3-inch hail. You can see all the 3-inch hail reports. Had some decent wind, and just moved literally all the way across the metro, producing 3-inch hail. You can see the right storm over there on the right, much weaker, or the left storm, the left split, was much weaker in this case. But this storm continued to move south, and you can even see here the inflow, right? So it's from Colleyville, and I think, Taylor, if you hit next, I think we might even highlight it here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
there
there's your inflow now pulling into this storm. And you can see, so what you want to look at is, where is the inflow coming from? Well, it's coming from this big warm pocket, right? So even though it's 2 a.m. in the morning, it's still in a very warm environment, and it's pulling in warm air. It continues to pull it in until it moves all the way across the metro, right? So we get this massive path of 3-inch hail. And then as soon as, and if you hit next again here, it's going to show, here's our inflow. And you can see it's been out of the urban heat island. So we're no longer pulling in warm air into the storm itself, into the updraft, and the storm completely dies out as soon as it makes it to the south side of Dallas.
This makes me think of a storm system that we had, I want to say a week or two ago now, that I kept saying, it looks like Dallas has just a storm maker in downtown, and it's just like firing off these storms. And I'm thinking that the exact same process was happening there, where these storms got to downtown and they were just exploding. And so the east side, northeast side of Dallas got hit pretty hard, where the west side really didn't get anything.
Yeah, and it's all about that fetch, right? So so sometimes you'll see storms when they're off just to the west, say like Weatherford, Willow Park, Azle. So the core itself hasn't moved into Dallas yet, but you'll see it intensify, and that's because that fetch of warm air is already coming in from Dallas. You also see, we've gotten the question, why does like Allen, Frisco, Little Elm, Denton, like why does that north area, why do storms tend to like turn and come into Dallas? Well, as soon as a supercell gets close to the urban heat island, it starts to pull in that warm air, the storm intensifies, and when storms intensify, they like to turn to the right. So it will literally take a storm that's going to miss Dallas and turn it into Dallas and intensify it at the same time. So it's kind of a double pop, right? So it's like, okay, we can get storms, and because the urban heat island, it'll actually pull them in. So they want that, like they're attracted to it. And at the same time, it can create storms that wouldn't even be able to be created. So it does a lot of things to create very intense hail in Dallas.
No wonder this is the hail capital of the world. It's not only creating the storms, but also intensifying them, drawing them into the city while these fronts are coming through.
Yeah. There you go.
And Derik, this is the June 6th storm. What year was that?
This was 2018, maybe 17, 19. They all blend together
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously, this whole theory though is not uncommon, right? We had some storms this year where, like you talked about, Taylor, that were popping up in Fort Worth. They moved all the way into Arlington. Now there were some other weather conditions that were helping and hurting the severe weather. So you still have to have the right mixture, the right cocktail, right, to make this stuff happen. But I'll tell you, so my good friend Jack Pincel. So on this night, I was actually in Minneapolis, which is funny. I'm flying to Minneapolis tomorrow, but so I was in Minneapolis, and we get in late. And so this is June 6th, right? And Dallas has not had a big hailstorm yet. So very rare to be June 6th not a significant, no 5-star event had happened in Dallas yet.
Wow, that is very rare.
Yeah, super rare. So Jack and I, we both land kind of about the same time. We're speaking at an event the next day in Minneapolis, and he's like, "You want to go get some food?" So I think we go to TGI Fridays. So we go to TGI Fridays, and we're sitting down having whatever burger, whatever we're having there. And he's like, "Man, Dallas not having us." He's a call center, Hail 911. We'll give him a little shout out here. So he's like, "Dallas is killing us business wise. Like, we need Dallas to get a big hailstorm." I'm like, "Same. Like, Dallas getting hail is good for all of us, right?" So he's like, "So you think it's going to happen?" Literally, it's 10 o'clock on June 6th or June 5th. I don't know how we did this here. So
did you pull up the radar and say, "Yeah, I do"?
No, it wasn't. It hadn't happened yet. And
started at 11, 12?
This started about 12 o'clock. Yeah, 12:15. So yeah, this is
12:15.
about 2 hours
He was
before this
2
storm.
hours early.
2 hours early. He asked me. He's like, "So you think Dallas is going to get a big storm?" And I was like, "Man." And the pattern that we were in, they were kind of under a heat dome at this time. So again, some sinking air, which was helping the cap be stronger. The jet stream was way out to the west. It just didn't look like the trigger was going to be there to overcome. And I was like, "Man, the next week doesn't look good." That puts us to June 15th. I was like, I think Dallas, this is going to be the year that they're not going to get hit. And then I kid you not, we're paying our bill, and I get a text message from Frank with a picture of the radar, and this storm is going up. And I'm like, "Check that. Dallas is about to get hit." And of course, I'm not going to get any sleep tonight now, but very happily not getting any sleep. But yeah, so the weather, it's fun.
It'll keep you on your toes because
all the time. You never know.
Will surprise you. That San Antonio storm a few weeks ago, big surprise. Only storm within states and states. We had storms out in Florida, and then Texas just blew up this storm over San Antonio. Now, it wasn't an urban heat island effect, but the weather will keep you on your toes.
Yeah, and we can go through these scenarios for lots of different cities, right? Reasons why these other cities do certain things.
Those microclimates.
So Derik, one of the things I noticed on this specific storm, and I'm wondering if this is unique to Dallas or if this is something that happens often. This storm, right, 12:15 a.m. is you start to see on the radar the storm popping up right on as it hits the heat island. Within an hour or two, it's dropping what you said, like 3-inch hail. What that turnaround time for it to produce that large of a hail in such a short period of time, is that something you see often with these type of storms in Dallas, or do you see them regularly around the country?
It actually does happen regularly around the country. So this is more of that. It's that loaded gun, right? That powdered keg barrel, right? That's just ready to explode. When you have that lid, the atmosphere gets super unstable. And it's not in a happy place, and it's just waiting for something to remove that lid. Sometimes that lid doesn't get removed, but typically the biggest days are the ones where it's just barely enough. When it's just barely enough, the biggest storms will happen. You typically get very isolated storms, so they get their own air mass. They can breathe everything, all the nice warm air that they want, all the moisture that they want. Those are the biggest days. So that can happen in Kansas and western Kansas, right? But what makes Dallas unique, it's the extra number of days that they get, right? So if western Kansas has a strong cap, and let's say that it can break the cap. Let's say it has a strong cap, 25 days, it breaks it 12 times, right? And let's say Dallas has the same strong cap 25 days, Dallas might break it 17. So that's really the difference that we're talking about. It's those extra 2 or 3 or 4 days that they get those big storms that everywhere else in the country doesn't.
It's just that little thing to push it over the edge. Makes them have so many more storms than
all
every
the difference
other
in
city.
the world. Yep.
And you mentioned microclimates. That is something that I want to talk about a few weeks from now in other HailChatter podcasts. But let's go on to, is the urban heat island impact growing?
It absolutely is in Dallas. And maybe we'll have other cities that get there, right? Oklahoma City is a growing city. I don't think it's close right now, but, I think if Oklahoma City tripled in size, might be there. Oklahoma City is about 1 million people, and Dallas is about 5 or 6. So, but if, you get to that 3 or 4 million mark, I think that's when you start to really see that urban heat island effect happen. So maybe we get additional cities eventually, but right now Dallas is the one. Houston, people see, right? It's in the plains, but it's actually too close to the Gulf. Is the problem with Houston? But Dallas is one of the fastest growing metros in the U.S. I mean, so, wow. Tarrant, Collin, Dallas, and Denton counties are 4 of the fastest growing counties in the U.S. Yeah. So as the metro grows, Hale's going to continue to get larger. It's going to continue to target that area. Was it 35,000 new homes in 2017?
I bet that number goes up every single year. This was pre-COVID times.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a problem that's in Dallas. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to be there. They're going to continue to get hailstorms. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when in Dallas that the $1 billion hailstorm happens. Not sure if they've hit $1 billion yet this year. They've gotten close a couple times, but I promise you they're not done.
Oh yeah, we're still at the very beginning of the season. Yeah. Urban heat island is something that people also talk about being a problem in the summer because we're so much hotter in the cities, and it's so much harder to cool down. And that we've talked about being a growing problem as well, that not just impacting storms, but also in the summer with just not being able to cool down.
Yeah.
All right. What you're saying, Derik, is that the amount of work that is available for contractors out there, especially in Dallas, is not stopping anytime soon. And especially, right, since they have all those storms. What the stat is, something like, every 2 to 5 years, roofs can tend to be replaced because of hail damage, or just because of just how many storms the DFW is getting every year. So there's plenty of work every year from these different hailstorms.
It's absolutely true. It is what it is. Can't change it.
No, you cannot change Mother Nature. You just have to adapt or sit back and watch.
Yep. I like to watch.
I do too. Well, thank you for putting this together. We appreciate it. And thank you all for watching HailChatter. We will come out next 2 weeks from now with another podcast. Again, I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox. This is our CEO Derik Kline, and in our Detroit office, Collin Hunt. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you in 2 weeks.